Hello and welcome to the Be Formless, Flow Driven CEO podcast. I've got Dr. Dushani Palliyaguru. I certainly don't think I got your surname right, Dushani, but I know that you'll be able to pronounce it better than me. I'm here to welcome Dushani to the show. Welcome, Dushani.
Thank you, B, for having me. This is great, and you pronounce my name perfectly fine.
Oh, thank you. And Dashani, you're all the way, I thought you might be in San Fran, but you're actually all the way in Sri Lanka. But you are a Sri Lankan American, and you can talk to us a little bit about being based in Texas, but currently based in Sri Lanka. But you have quite an extensive bio. But also, we just had a quick side chat then, and it sounds like you've been living the formless life for the last few years yourself. So I'm really interested to chat about that. But first things first, let's just do a proper intro with a bit about your background. So, like I said, Sri Lankan American toxologist, gerontologist, an award-winning scientist with over a decade of experience in aging, disease prevention, and environmental health. And you're the co-founder and CEO of HealthSurveil, which is a Texas-based health tech startup that leverages data science, sensor technology, and AI to prevent and manage aging-related chronic diseases. I might let you share a bit about your background. Obviously you studied or you earned your PhD in environmental and occupational health from the University of Pittsburgh. And it sounds like you then focused hard in on NRF2. I don't even know what that means, so excuse my ignorance, pathway and liver disease prevention. But then you did a postdoctoral training at the National Institute of Aging, where you research biomarkers of aging intervention in Alzheimer's disease. And not only that, you've got all these scientific contributions in really high impact journals such as cell metabolism and molecular nutrition and food research. You can tell it's totally Monday, can't you? I can't even get my words right. Um, but I love that you're also a sought after speaker and educator, and you love sharing insights on longevity, the environmental health, but also women's leadership in science. And I love that you're bringing the younger generation along. Tell us all about this, how you came from what you've studied to then co-founding and starting your own business, how you've been formless, like you said, in the last few years, and yeah, tell us a bit about your journey.
Okay, yeah. Um, so I guess I'll start with where it all began, which is Sri Lanka. Like you said, I'm originally from Sri Lanka. When I finished my high school, I got a full scholarship to go to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I studied biochemistry and molecular biology and a minor in mathematics. So this was more than 20 years ago. Oh, about 20 years ago. And then I really got into this idea of health and wellness and how we could actually use it to improve public health outcomes. So I decided to get my PhD in environmental occupational health. Went to University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. Did that for about 5.5 years. Did a couple of postdocs as well, one at University of Pittsburgh, where I studied again how nutrition and molecules found in certain types of food can improve health outcomes. In that case, I was looking at breast cancer prevention from a molecule that was found in broccoli sprouts.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it was really interesting. So there's like a whole world of research out there on broccoli sprouts and how they can be cancer prevention agents. It's really fascinating.
yeah. I do love
Uh,
broccoli, I've got to say, but I don't know if they're the same as broccoli sprouts, but I do love my broccoli.
yeah, broccoli sprouts because the amount of the concentration of this agent that we're talking about, which is sulforaphane, is actually much higher in seedlings and in broccoli sprout compared to mature broccoli. But you do get some of the benefits. So I encourage everybody to eat not just broccoli, but also cruciferous vegetables like cabbage, kale,
Yeah.
all the others as well. Um, so then I really got into aging because aging is something that affects everybody. And since I was focusing on certain types of diseases, particularly cancer, I understood that. aging actually is the number one risk factor for a lot of chronic diseases, including most types of cancers. Of course, you do see a lot of younger people getting diagnosed with certain types of cancers now, but that's a slightly different phenomena.
Mm.
Uh, but for the most part, I think aging is one of the biggest risk factors for cancer as well. So that's what really got me into thinking about aging. And I decided to do my second postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institute on Aging in Baltimore, in Maryland, and where I did a lot of work on biomarkers of aging. So, looking at how our metabolism changes as we get older, our body fat, our lean mass, and various different types of health indices, how they age as we get older. And then I also looked at Alzheimer's disease. I think you mentioned this as well, how we could use certain dietary interventions to improve outcomes related to Alzheimer's disease. Did a bunch of work in that space. And then I got publications, I got grants, a lot of things, really positive things happened during that time. But there was actually a life-altering event that happened again. I lost my mom to endometrial cancer in 2022.
I'm so sorry.
Um, Thank you. And that was really what changed my career trajectory in many ways. So for me, it was a scientist who had been working on cancer prevention, on disease prevention, improving health outcomes, and having to deal with such a with a disease at such a personal level, I think changed me. I think it happens to a lot of people I've spoken to as well about this. So I wanted to actually do something that was more practical and something that was related to creating solutions, that we could
Mm.
use then and there. Because I think research is great and it's really the foundation of a lot of the things that we do. But at the same time, unfortunately, the way research is carried out right now, it takes years, if not decades, before research is actually translated into something that we could, actually use.
Yeah.
Um, so this is really what switched my thinking from being an academic, being a very research heavy, research focused scientist, to creating something that I could potentially give to people much faster, sooner, more efficiently. So then I decided to start my health startup, which is called HealthSurveil. Like you said, we focus on developing solutions for aging-related chronic diseases. So we essentially function as a startup, but we also have an arm that provides services and consultations and things like that. So we work on the interface, I would say, broadly speaking, healthy aging as well as environmental health, because we believe that there's such a huge overlap that we don't really acknowledge.
Mm.
But the idea behind HealthSurveil is to be able to address both of these components simultaneously. So with related to, I guess, the startup arm of things, we create solutions, digital health solutions, data related solutions, and also AI related solutions to improve aging outcomes as well as environmental health outcomes. And then related with regard to the I guess the consulting and the services arm, we work with uh, companies, individuals who are interested in ensuring that their products, that their the solutions that they're using in their day-to-day lives are actually safe and efficacious as well. So we work with various types of supplement companies. We work with medical device companies who are looking to make their products safer for consumers. So, in a nutshell, that's what we do. I'm happy to go into detail about any of them. So, yeah, I've been. I guess I'm the startup is based in Texas, so I split my time between Texas and Sri Lanka because my dad is in Sri Lanka. I'm also trying to start some projects in Sri Lanka because Sri Lanka is actually the in South Asia has the highest proportion of older adults, and aging is not something that's widely discussed in this country. I think in
Mm.
South Asia in
Mm.
general, we have so
Mm.
many issues related to chronic diseases related to aging, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, but there's very little focus on how we could really use aging as a gateway to address these diseases. So I'm trying to start up a few projects in Sri Lanka as well, which brings me here. So yeah, a lot of things going on, being
Yeah, you
formless.
certainly are, aren't you? You've certainly been quite formless. First, I really want to acknowledge, the loss of your mother. Like, it's just one of the hardest things. And, especially from such a form of cancer that, I don't hear about endio cancer that often. But, I'm not sure about you, but this whole, I don't know, it's interesting, how you're navigating your way through grief because that doesn't really go away. It's just how you learn to live with it. But then also, there's grief, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And then there's almost like an awakening. And so from your grief came, by the sounds of things, an awakening to go, all right, life is precious. Nothing's necessarily destined. What can I be doing to make a bigger impact in this world? And it's almost like grief becomes a gift in a way, in the weirdest possible way. What's your thoughts on that in terms of how it's your mum ultimately gave you the gift by the sounds of things to then take on a different, career trajectory and all with your mum's blessing to then do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and it's something that I had to think very hard about because doing a career switch is not very easy. And I've been trained as a researcher. I think like a scientist. I do not think like a business person. So there's a lot of unlearning and relearning that I had to also go through. But I think at the end of the day, I think the reason why we do what we do is because there's a certain sense of, I guess, passion or a calling in some ways that we're really drawn to. So for many of us, it's very difficult to ignore that and go down a different path. So for me, at least, that's really what I endured. For me, I could not see myself going down a different path, knowing that this life-altering experience had happened to me, and I had to at least give it a try.
Mm.
Now, I don't know whether the startup is going to be successful. We're still at the very early stages. It's a really long, hard road,
Yeah, I get
as
it.
startup founders would agree, right? But at the same time, for me, I like to not live with regrets. I like to, if the opportunity presents itself, if there is something that I really feel like I should try out at a given moment, I want to go at it full force and then deal with the outcomes. So put my heart and soul into it for a few years, whatever time it takes, and then see what happens. I think essentially that's what running your own business is all about, right? Taking a risk, putting everything you got into it, and see where it happens and what happens with it. And then you pivot, you go down that path, you improve, and sort of, see where things take you. And I think
Mm,
that's where this is how you create new things, right?
mm.
This is how you discover new avenues. And if you really want to truly create something that's useful to people, I think you have to really go down that path of the unknown.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much on so many aspects. And I relate so much as a founder and, starting my own business only, it's 2 years ago actually, come this July. And just that whole, I call it the non-linear navigation. And, similar to you, I took a career pivot. And it's so easy to just fall back into what you've always done and what you've like, but when you know, and when you've almost got this whisper or this nudge within you, it's something deep within inside of you, you have to give it your all to really know whether that, this is where you're meant to be. But I also feel like, and I'm not sure about you, but I also feel like that it's almost like there's only so much you can control. And so the rest of it, if you let it, takes care of itself. But it's also having that ability to not be so, controlling, holding onto the steering wheel. And like you say, being able to kind of navigate your way through the unknown. Question for you, just on that. What was the hardest part for you? You realize that you had a bigger job to do, and that was to provide more practical solutions for, preventative health and, obviously chronic disease and illnesses in aging. When you decided that you were going to, I guess, pivot in your career, and knowing that you had this, an amazing research background, and you just mentioned before you don't have all the business, noise, but basically who does really? Like at the end of the day, I don't think I have it all. I don't think anyone does. Do we ever have it together? What was the hardest part for you? What's been the most challenging or trickiest part for you in terms of the career pivot, shift, whatever you want to call it, being formless, going from a form into a formless form? What's been the hardest part for you?
Yeah, I love this question because I think going into it, maybe it's a good thing, right? You don't plan out everything. You don't know what's going to happen. There's so much unknown about this process. For me, I think one of the biggest challenges, since we still do quite a bit of research and a lot of the solutions that we create are very grounded in evidence and it's
Yeah.
data. So I think for me, the biggest challenge has been, I think, going from some of the big name affiliations with institutions, universities, government organizations, and going from that to being a relative nobody. Uh,
Yes.
you know,
So relate.
so that really has been very eye-opening because I think a lot of things that I also took for granted, back in the day when I was affiliated with a university, with a big name lab, or with an organization, the amount of weight that it carried, I didn't really recognize. And I don't think it's necessarily a positive thing, right? Because again, like I said, if you want to create something new, you have to step out of this comfort zone. And in order to do that, you have to break a lot of barriers and you have to be okay with just being a nobody for a long time. So even things like if you're trying to get a data set from somebody, this is something that we do all the time. We need to make solutions based on data. So we are constantly talking to researchers or organizations that have this data, but they see the fact that, oh, you're not affiliated with anybody. They're like, who are you? What are you trying to do? We don't really know this. And they immediately dismiss you. Sorry to say, not everybody. Along the way, I've also met some really
Mm.
fantastic individuals, some great researchers who've been very, very helpful. And I think the reason I've continued to move forward in spite of these barriers is because of those people who they recognize that this person is trying to do something different. They don't fit into this mold that you usually encounter, but they recognize that there's power in it and they're willing to work with you. They're willing to take a shot. And then from there, it's your responsibility to, be a good collaborator, to be responsive, to be responsible for what you're bringing to the table, and so on. So I think that part going from somebody, and I don't want to make it seem like, there was a lot of status involved, but again, that affiliation with organizations carries so much power in the world that I belong to. But I think gradually you sort of, build some sort of name, you put your best foot forward and sort of showcase and what you bring to the table. And that's a painful, long process that takes years. And we're still in the middle of it. I don't think we're out of the danger zone yet. But I think again, it's a slow process going from having everything like again resources was another thing, right? Like in a lot of
Oh
these
my
big,
gosh, yeah.
so you have money to do so much things, and then like going from that to a startup with a very limited budget, you have to be very, very careful about what you spend money on, including traveling for conferences and meetings. So you have to really fight for a lot of things that initially I didn't really have to. So in some ways, I've developed a lot of appreciation for what these big organizations and structures bring to the table, but also I recognize the fact that a lot of very talented people are also stuck in that, right? Because it's so much easier to be in these environments and continue to do the same thing over and over again, as opposed to step out of it, break free from it. And I don't think breaking free from it is for everybody, but I think there are some people who really should and go down
Yeah.
that path,
Yeah.
but they don't because of this comfort that it provides. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to you want to do at the end of the day, what your financial circumstances are, what your family and other commitments are, and so on. But for me, it was, I just had to do this, and therefore I decided to do it.
Yeah, I love all of this so much. I feel like we're like you're mirroring everything I am all about in terms of, I think ego played a big role for me as well in terms of, um, everyone has a different life altering experience, but you go from almost like this fixed form, this, like you say, you've got, a really high profile in an industry or, kind of a sector that you've always been in. And, I did too. And then you decide that actually I'm going to take all the skills from my previous world into my new world and my own business, which is essentially, what you've done, and you've still got research within it, and similar to me in terms of this transformation and strategically in my business, all my business sense. But you aren't a proven entity anymore because you're doing something a bit different. And I think that it takes a lot of courage and a lot of being brave to be able to get the whole shutdown of no, like you're almost feeling like you say, you're going back to literally ground zero again and you're rebuilding. But so, you have to drop that ego, you have to rebuild, and you have to be able to handle the days when you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can handle any more no's or any more, you're not a proven entity, or, kind of, I don't know if about you, but there's been times when I've been looked at like, what are you talking about? Or like where you know exactly what you're doing. And so I think that just takes a lot of courage in itself. But I think that, the practicality and the solutions that you're offering, that comes from a lived experience, right? And so for me, it's similar in terms of I know what I'm doing is coming with practical solutions, but it's also coming from this lived experience. And I think, with regards to you talking about there's some really talented people that are almost stuck in the known. I think sometimes when you have those lived experiences or those things that happen, they almost just force you to come out of being stuck in the known to then have to become unstuck because you've got a bigger job to be done. Um, and I don't know if that's all making sense to you, but it just feels like that's exactly what we're talking about here. But I want to circle right back to your business and the fact that you are offering these practical solutions. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of the sorts of solutions that you are providing from a practical sense and how it is helping, prevent diseases, chronic diseases, and things like that. What are you doing that is, when you're working with the individuals or you're working with the companies, how does that work?
Yeah, so I guess we're working in two areas, like I said. So the first is related to environmental health, and then the second is related to healthy aging. So within environmental health, one of the things that we have done is we've recognized the importance of air pollution as one of the key determinants of health outcomes in a lot of people. But unfortunately, people recognize that air pollution is a problem, but you don't really hear too much about how badly it impacts people's health, unless you're an asthmatic or you have some sort of chronic disease like emphysema or a chronic lung condition or so on. So what we're essentially doing in that space is we've created an IoT or an Internet of Things monitoring device for environmental pollutants, or in this case, air pollutants. And what we're trying to do is use it within the context of hospitals and also other academic environments as a data collection device, but also as a way to be able to predict how environmental pollutants like air pollutants could be impacting your health
Mm.
um, for various types of people, whether you're at a high risk or at a low risk for these types of diseases. So within healthy aging, what we're currently focusing on is cognitive aging. So I've done some work in Alzheimer's. I have a few of my teammates who are also working in Alzheimer's related areas. So one of the things we're very interested in is being able to create a program around improving cognitive decline as you get older. So Alzheimer's disease is not a disease that's normal, is associated with normal aging. So meaning if we are aging healthily, we will not develop Alzheimer's disease. So there's a common misconception that, oh, we're going to develop Alzheimer's, but it's a very specific pathological condition. Um, but there's also cognitive decline that's related to aging that may or may not develop into full-blown Alzheimer's disease. So what we're essentially working in this area to be able to track and target changes that happen as you get older. So not just at the very late stages of life, but we want to start like much earlier, for example, in middle age, because what we see is that there are a lot of changes that happen in the brain and also in other parts of the body that precede these pathological states, right? So if you think of interventions, the earlier you intervene, the better. So we want to be able to create a program around this idea. So that's another active area of research that we're working on as well. So the idea is to sort of create this program, which we're in the process of doing, and then work with clinics and individuals to be able to provide this as a tool to improve their cognitive health. And then I also want to mention related to sort of the non-startup work that, so these are all, very much R&D, research and development based, we're creating solutions. But again, we are also very interested in sort of providing services as a company because we recognize that we have expertise in very specific areas. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier as well, we do is we work with industry clients who are interested in making their products safer, very simply put. So they could be working with uh, food supplements or certain products that are given to consumers, or could be medical devices, environmental contaminants, and things like that. So we work with them to make sure that the products that they're making are actually safe, and we do this through a toxicology approach. So my background is in environmental
Mm.
health, which is also toxicology. So I'm trying to bring that work as well into this. So I mean, to me, it seems like it's part of the this entire, it's all part of the same problem, I guess. But we serve different clients, different customers based on their needs. So we also, we not only serve individuals but also directly to businesses and
Yeah,
industries as
amazing. Do you, Deshani, this could be a bit of a wild out there sort of a question, could be a formless question if I'm honest, but do you, in terms of just the cognitive load and, even from Alzheimer's and things like that, have you ever thought about, like the world we're living in, it's so fast paced, burnout, working 24/7. Also as a founder, you're always on, you're never switching off. Well, you are, but there's always something on your mind. Is there any association or is there any research being done out there to look at how when we overload the when we have cognitive overload, that the impact that can create from a disease perspective, like is that something that you guys are exploring as well from a business perspective, or as you work with individuals? I know that we've talked about aging, but do you see also that with that, cognitive condition that we age a lot quicker, and I guess that's from a health question as well. Is that a question? Like, I mean, does that make sense what I'm asking? My brain is just like trying to spit out what I'm wanting to ask you, but I guess it's just the association with cognitive overload, how that is then increasing the chances of, chronic disease, Alzheimer's and things like that.
so I get what you're asking, and I think the short answer is I don't think there's any concrete evidence suggesting the direct link between sort of these high functioning individuals and what happens to them later in life. But I think the reason that that data doesn't exist is because those studies have not been conducted, right?
Yeah, okay.
So I think one of the challenges with looking at cognitive decline from this perspective is the fact that it takes a lot of time for this type of cognitive decline to develop, right? So you're not talking about something that happens within 1 to 2 years. You're talking about decades in many cases. So doing studies like this can be a little, time consuming. It
Mm.
requires resources and so on. So I think honestly, the studies have not been done, but I will say that there's a large amount of recognition for what you're talking about right now. In fact, when we talk about these solutions related to cognitive aging that we're creating right now, a lot of clinics, a lot of doctors talk to us about the fact that there are CEOs and high functioning individuals who come to them, and they're interested in two things. So the first thing they're interested in is how they're going to age, like what you said, but they're also interested in sort of keeping their brains, keeping their high functioning cognitive capacities intact for a very long time, right? Because these are people who've been driven, who
Mm.
achieved a lot. They want to sort of continue to work into their not just 60s, but 70s, 80s, whatever, right? So this is actually a very hot area, I would say, where people recognize that, there are certain things that will, affect us negatively because, like you said, perhaps certain stresses, and not being able to recover as fast from,
Mm.
financial downfall or whatever other stresses you're talking about in the life of a CEO, right? So you're taking high risk constantly, but you're not constantly being rewarded for it, right? This is the story of a lot of people. So what exactly does that do to not just your brain, but to you physiologically? Is that
Yeah,
killing you fast? Perhaps we don't have the data yet, but I think we will in the future have a little
that
bit
sort of
more
data.
information about it. But I think, again, thinking from it from the perspective of how can we, these are individuals who, in some ways, must be protected, right? These are people who decide to take risks. They are really the creators and sort of the fabric of society, who's constantly, producing new things, and these are high functioning, intelligence individuals. So I think in some ways we also have to make sure that these people are able to function to their full capacity for a very long time without experiencing compromised health, when they get into their 50s, 60s, and
Yeah.
70s. Something that I've heard, and this is a very, very small solution, I think, um, it helps to sort of set up a lifestyle that's sustainable, no matter how
Mm.
busy you are. It's easier said than done. So something that I do, I have a crazy lifestyle, probably similar to yours, but I always prioritize physical activity. And this is one of the
Mm.
things that has been shown time and time again to improve health outcomes
Yeah.
across the board. So dedicating 30 to 45 minutes every
Yeah.
day to some form of exercise, whether it's, running, walking, swimming, yoga, weight training, whatever it is, I think can have a big impact because it also releases your stress, takes your mind off of things, and perhaps if the evidence actually lines up, it will also protect you later in life. But
Yeah.
again, I do want to stress we don't really have definitive evidence for.
No, I think you've answered that so well, and it's interesting you talk about that. Obviously someone who experienced severe, well, medically diagnosed burnout. I still say to my doctor to this day, I'm going to get him on the pod later this year, but I always say to him, am I fully recovered? Like I have worried about so much about, just the perils of burnout and, being such a high achiever and someone who has always been a go, go, go sort of a person. That one thing I've always been concerned about is my cognitive, load, like not load, my cognitive recovery, if you like, but also physically. And yeah, exercise for me is like that active recovery. It's imperative that we do it, and something I talk to my clients about all the time. Don't look at it as something that I'll do it if I have to. That's not sitting on the couch and binge watching Netflix or whatever is not going to rejuvenate you or reset you. One, I told you we would talk longer than we've got, but one last, you shared an insight when this is my last question for you, but you shared an insight when you signed on to the pod, and it was, around life, leadership, or business. And I love it. You talked about the importance of staying focused, but also being adaptable. Can you leave your final words just with regards to sharing a bit about that for us all, please.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's important to know that you can't control everything. I think you mentioned this earlier as well. And as a founder, as somebody who's, in a leadership position, you need to always recognize that. I think that should be the default in many ways. Because if you try to control everything, that can really drive you down a path of destruction, right? So you don't want to get into
100%.
that. Um, but having said that, I think there's incredible power in also being adaptable, being formless, because every day you might have to deal with a new challenge, and you probably don't even know what the challenge is, right? So for me, sometimes I think, oh yeah, I sort of mapped out my week. I think I have an idea of what's going to happen, and then something completely unexpected comes about, and then you have to deal with it, right? So I think recognizing that not everything's within your control, um, but being able to adapt to new
Mm.
challenges is incredibly important. But I would also say, related to all of that, is also the importance of putting your foot down, being very assertive, and really saying where do you draw your boundaries and
I love
your
that.
lines. Because oftentimes one of the challenges of being very adaptable and being formless is people, individuals, situations might just just land themselves around you, and you wouldn't know what to do. So I think it's very, very important that you think about what's important to you, what's important for your organization, what's important for your team, having those priorities. So go back to your goals, go back to your
Yeah.
mission, and then sort of say, these are things I'm okay with. These are not things I'm okay with. So oftentimes you might be encountering, clients or collaborators, individuals you have to work with that may have a different alignment than yours. So I think it's important to be adaptable, be open, be formless, but you have to really, at the end of the day, have your values, have your priorities in line, and say, okay, these are the boundaries. This is what I will do. This is what I won't
I
do.
do. Yeah.
I think
Agree.
that's sort of what I would
I
leave
love
people.
that. I love that. And what is the next 6 months? Like, what's your goal for, speaking of goals, what's your big number one goal for HealthSurveil between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, so I have a conference coming up on healthy longevity in the south of France. Very excited about it.
Oh, cool.
So our plan is to actually sort of soft launch this cognitive aging program that we're doing. So looking forward to meeting investors, meeting other folks in the field as well, trying to get feedback on the program. So that's really one of the big things. And then I also recently learned that I will be doing a Fulbright fellowship in Sri Lanka. So that allows me to spend time in Sri Lanka doing research and also a little bit of teaching in toxicology. Uh,
Amazing.
so I'm going to be spending a few months in Sri Lanka, where I will be looking not at human health, actually. It's a project related to ecological health. So that's what I will be doing. So those are the two big things. And of course, gaining some financial security, and helping my team members in whatever way I can, because they've been there, they've been working hard. We're a startup, so we don't really have a lot to offer still, but I recognize and I really thank my team members, and also collaborators, people who've helped along the way. I think, the reason why we're still doing what we're doing is because of these individuals. So thank you to them.
Yeah, wow. Gosh, lots of big ambitions, but you seem like you're going to smash them all and doing it with ensuring that you're exercising every day, which I love. So making sure you've got that time for you. How do we find out more about you, more about your company? I'll share it in the notes. So we best to find you on LinkedIn, your website.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I also have two websites. The first website is for HealthSurveil, so that's more related to the type of work we do. If anybody has any questions, you can just send me an email. I also have a website that is more related to healthy aging, where I try to write, articles. I've been falling behind because I don't have time, but I've been trying to do that as well, because I think it's very important. So I'll send you that if you want to sort of drop it in the notes,
Yeah,
or
amazing. Yeah.
people can. I'm very open to chatting with people, particularly related to healthy aging and environmental health, because there's so much people don't fully understand.
No,
And
I
if
know.
I'm able to contribute in whatever small way, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I'm gonna pick you up on one thing because I do it all the time too, that I'm behind, but are we really? Like I think we've got to be kinder to ourselves because if it's all if we are adaptable, if we are living in this nonlinear world, who are we catching up to, in terms of it's the pressure we put on ourselves. So you're not behind, you're just in the moment and you're just doing the best you can on each and every other day. And I have to remind myself of that as well. So don't be too hard on yourself. But thank you so much, Dashani. I've really enjoyed our chat today. I could keep talking to you about the preventative aging and all of that. And you sounds like you've got some amazing projects, and especially with the conference coming up as well. So wishing you all the very best. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, P. This was fun. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what it was going to be. It was formless, but I really loved it. Thank you so much for having me. I
Hey,
look
thank
forward
you.
to talking again, hopefully.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you.